Tonight. Oh, all right, now I got to get this going. Goofed off long enough. All right, are we live? All right, I'm going to say happy Halloween to everybody. Everybody get a trick or a treat? If not, we'll get to you sooner or later. I don't know if I can throw it that far, though. And I still don't throw it, I might hit somebody and put their eye out. Either way, so I want to welcome you to the City Council meeting of, let's see, this is October 23rd. You would think it was a little bit later in the month, but it's not. 6:30 p.m. Let the record reflect all council members, with the exception of Councilmember Hall, is here. Are here. What did I say? Is here. Oh, thank you. And tonight the invocation will be given by Pastor James Class. It's always good to have a pastor here with lots of class. And he's from Calvary. It worked out okay. I got permission, didn't I?
Yeah. Yes.
So anyhow, Pastor James Class, senior pastor of Calvary Chapel of Santee, has served the needs of Santee for more than 35 years. The church is thriving at its location at the end of Summit Avenue and offers worship services on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. Pastor James Class is the newly installed senior pastor as of July 2024. James is married and father of 4 grown children. The pastors and church members of Calvary Chapel are committed to praying regularly for this city council and its members, and boy, oh boy, do we need that. So we want to thank you for doing that. We also like for you to pray tonight for our great nation, our state, and those folks that would be in harm's way protecting us everywhere. So the Pledge of Allegiance will be given tonight by, where's Sam? All right, Sam Rinsberry. He'll do the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So please rise and for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we do come before you, and we thank you for this opportunity that we have to gather here together. We do pray for your blessing to be upon this time, upon this meeting. Lord, we do recognize that it is an honor and a privilege to live in this country, to experience all of the good things that you've provided for us. And so we do pray for your protection. Lord, we pray for those hurting, struggling, even through some difficult seasons of life. We pray that you'd see them through it. Lord, we thank you for all of those who serve. We thank you for all of those who give their lives to make this a better place to live in. I want to lift up each and every leader, council member that's here tonight, and just pray for your blessing to be upon them. I pray that you'd give them wisdom and direction and guidance. I pray that the very important decisions that they'll be making for this great community would be ones that honor you. And Lord, that they would be able to walk in your goodness and your favor. So we lift up this time to you. We pray for your blessing on the city of Santee. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. It's in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. People of Santee, please join me in the recital of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah. So as you can see, we're having a little bit of fun tonight. So here's what I'm going to do, just because, we want to continue with a little fun before we get on with the meat and potatoes of the business. Councilmember McNellis, can you tell us how you're dressed tonight? Or
what your costume is, I believe.
what's your costume?
I'm Vice Mayor Trotter tonight. If anybody has seen him out in the street, this is it.
It's a pretty good,
kind of nailed
it's
it.
a pretty good depiction, I agree.
Pretty good. And Vice Mayor, how are you dressed tonight?
Tonight my costume is a chip on my shoulder.
And knowing you, it's more like chips on your shoulder.
It's a pretty healthy sized bag there.
Yes, it is. And, of course, I'm your favorite chef tonight, Chef Boyardee. Councilmember Koval.
I think mine's obvious. I'm an astronaut. I hope you got that.
And Ron Hall came as the Invisible Man.
Yes.
All right, let's get down to some business. Let's get down to business. So let's see. There's any items on the consent calendar to be added, deleted, or reordered?
None for me.
Vice Mayor?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McNellis?
Nothing from me, sir.
Nothing from me. City Manager?
Nothing, sir.
City Attorney?
Nothing.
City Clerk? Any speaker slips?
No speaker slips.
Oh, by the way, who are you dressed like tonight?
I'm dressed like Sully from Monsters, Inc., and I'll give a shout out to my wife, who's Mike, out in the audience. Mike Wazowski.
Mikowski.
And then
Veronica.
Veronica.
I am a Santee Ravens football coach.
Yay!
Let's go Ravens! Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
It's our local
All right then.
Pop Warner team.
So we don't have any additions, deletions, or corrections. Do I have a motion to approve the calendar?
Motion approved. Consent
Second.
Calendar.
I have a motion and a second. Let's please vote.
Motion carries unanimously with council members
Thank
present.
you. And you're probably not going to see this at any other council meeting you go to tonight, KUSI. That takes us to non-agenda public comment. I didn't forget about it tonight.
No speakers.
No speakers, all right. That takes us to new business then, which is City Council Workshop to review and discuss the City of Santee Development Impact Fees, Nexus Study, and proposed development impact fees. And were you going to start it off, or? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The purpose of tonight's workshop is to review and discuss the findings and recommendations made in the Development Impact Fee Nexus Study and the proposed updates to the Development Impact Fee prepared by Harris & Associates. In 2023, we put out an RFP for a consultant to prepare a Nexus study and update our Development Impact Fee schedule in accordance with the Mitigation Fee Act. The city has not adopted updated development impact fees since 2005. The major updates to the city's development impact fee program recommended in the Nexus study include adjustments to existing development impact fees, addition of 3 new fees for fire facilities, long-range planning, and program administration, change in methodology for residential fees from a per unit to square foot basis, and change in basis for the annual updates from Consumer Price Index to Construction Cost Index. Prior to tonight's meeting, city staff and our consultant presented the proposed fee updates and the draft Nexus study findings to the Building Industry Association. The BIA reviewed the report and the proposed DIF fees and had no additional comments or questions on the fees or the report. Megan Quinn from Harris & Associates is here to present the Nexus study findings and the proposed development impact fees. Based on the discussion and any direction given by council tonight, staff will return on November 13th to present a final Nexus study report and adopt the proposed development impact fees. With that, I would like to introduce Megan Quinn.
Welcome.
Hello. Let me just get set up a little bit. Hello, thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Appreciate your time here tonight to go over this. It's a little bit of a longer presentation, so please bear with me, but I'm happy to go over all the proposed impact fees as well as the new fees and go over a little bit about development impact fees in general. The purpose of our workshop today and in general why development impact fees are updated as well as adjusted over time. As Aaron mentioned a bit, we're going to review the development impact fees and discuss the findings and recommendations that are within the Nexus study and the proposed development impact fees. That includes updated fees as well as 3 new fees. Without an update to old fees, there may not be adequate funding to fund infrastructure within the city to support the growth and development in the city over time. So it's really important as the city builds out to update fees, especially as These fees have not been updated since 2005, as Aaron also mentioned. There's been a significant increase in cost of facilities since 2005, especially with transportation and park facilities. There's been a lot of updates in legislation related to development impact fees. That includes legal requirements for the Mitigation Fee Act, as well as AB 602. You'll hear me say AB 602 a lot, so bear with me a bit, but that's recent legislation related to development impact fees, and it greatly affects the development impact fees proposed in the Nexus study today. There's also been a change in assumptions used, trip rates for non-residential development especially, and the land use.
I'm sorry, can you educate everybody on why AB 602 has changed?
Yeah, I will update that. Let me go forward a bit. And
So that's in your presentation?
yeah, it's in my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just go forward and then move back. But Assembly Bill 602, or AB 602, is recent legislation that was enacted in January and July of 2022. It really came out of having additional transparency related to development impact fees, and it made several amendments to the laws in AB 1600 for Mitigation Fee Act. It encourages agencies to charge development impact fees on a per square footage basis for residential development moving forward. Previously, most residential fees were on a per unit basis. You can charge development impact fees on a per unit basis still, but you have to make 3 additional findings, and that is not the industry norm now. And the development community really is encouraging the per square footage basis. It also requires a Nexus study to review the existing level of service for each of the facilities compared to the proposed level of service if it's different, and an explanation of why. It requires an agency to adopt a capital improvement program or a CIP as part of the Nexus study. This isn't as comprehensive as your citywide CIP, but it includes all of the facilities that will be funded by the fee revenues over time. And this will be adopted as part of the Nexus study. Finally, Nexus studies now have to be adopted every 8 years. Previously, there were no requirements on when they had to be updated, as since yours hasn't been updated since 2005, you can see how that was not in effect previously. The Nexus study that is in front of you are part of this workshop and will be part of the fee adoption, meets all the requirements of AB 602, and it does include the CIP as Appendix A, as a capital improvement plan that would be adopted as part of the Nexus study. So moving back to a little bit more background on just why impact fees are important and why we went through this update. It's really important for new development to pay their fair share of infrastructure without burdening existing development. And new development and development impact fees are only on new development. We cannot fund existing deficiencies. Development impact fees equitably distribute the costs related to new infrastructure to all potential new developments. And as part of the process, while we're looking at the maximum justifiable fee, we're also trying to balance fee levels with the desired economic growth within the city. The Nexus study that is presented to you by Harrison Associates demonstrates the need for additional infrastructure and facilities to serve the anticipated growth within the city and the costs for those facilities, and then how that's going to be recovered through the development impact fees. Just finally, a little bit more about impact fees. They're, as I mentioned, through AB 1600 or the Mitigation Fee Act, and they're one-time fees. I just want to make sure that's clear. They're not ongoing taxes. They're one-time fees typically charged at building permit, and they're only assessed on new development. We cannot fund existing deficiencies, ongoing maintenance, or salaries. The one caveat I do want to make to that is for the program administration fee, we can include staff time within that fee. That's the only caveat for not funding salaries. Fees only fund capital costs otherwise. And to make sure that we're having transparency and funds are being used for the projects that which are attended, there are annual and 5-year reporting requirements, and that's why there's additional needs for that program administration fee that I'll get to in a while. For the purpose of this Nexus study, we updated the city's current fees as well as 3 proposed fees. The city currently has a public facilities, a traffic signal, traffic mitigation, drainage, and a Parks and Lieu fee. And then we're proposing a fire facilities, long-range planning, and program administration fee. The Nexus study satisfies the AB 1600 requirements, AB 602 guidance, and provides all the necessary technical analysis to support the adoption of the fee and provides all of the findings for the Nexus analysis. If when we come back in November 13th and the city does adopt the fees, they will be effective 60 days after the city's final action. In terms of the process for updating the fees, it was really a collaborative process between Harrison Associate and the city. We updated data and really coordinated with the city, especially on obtaining land use information and the list of proposed capital improvements for new development, the list of existing infrastructure and facilities within the city, as well as the value of the existing facilities within the city, and a bunch of other necessary data for the analysis. We worked diligently with the city on the land uses, going back and forth and making sure we had the correct existing land uses within the city, as well as the proposed land uses for build out. We updated the methodology based on AB 602 that I already mentioned, including a review of the existing level of service for all of the fees and updating the fees for residential to a fee per square foot and then adding the capital improvement plan. We also reviewed the existing fees and how the proposed fees compare to the existing fees, as well as how they compare to surrounding jurisdictions in terms of feasibility. And then we had numerous coordination meetings with the city staff to review the analysis, review draft tables, as well as review the draft report and the draft, multiple versions of the draft report. And then we presented to the BIA, as Aaron mentioned, went over the presentation and provided them with the draft report without any additional questions or comments. I know this has already been mentioned, but I'm just going to highlight one more time. Really, the main changes are we went to a residential per square foot fee, and then the non-residential fees are on a per 1,000 building square footage basis, but that's not a significant change. We included 3 new fees: fire facility, long-range planning, and program administration. We updated the land uses based on the build-out of the city, updated the cost assumptions, the planned facilities, the level of service, and methodology updates. We also updated the escalator factor for future annual escalations of the development impact fees from the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, to the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index. This is typical for these type of fees, as it is based on construction costs, and these are tied to construction costs. So this is a typical factor that is used for escalation for development impact fees.
How often is that fee updated?
Typically, they're escalated on an annual basis, and then now it's going to be required by AB 602 to go through a full update every 8 years, unless the city wants to do an update earlier.
No, the index that you're.
Oh, they do an
talking about.
annual. They do an annual update.
Where do we find that?
They actually update it monthly, and you
There you
can. There's an online site, and it's they post it, and there's a 20 region index, as well as then there's a region. There's a LA. There's a San Diego. There's a San Francisco index. So they have multiple different indices, and then we have it within the Nexus study which one to use. And once adopted, we also provide the index that is the basis to start with. So moving forward, it's easier to know which one to update the fees on.
Thank you.
This table here just shows all of the fees. Again, public facilities, traffic signal, traffic mitigation, drainage, park and lieu, fire facilities, long-range planning, and administration, and then a total of the fees. We're looking at about $17.61 per square foot for residential and $18.52 per square foot for multifamily. If you're wondering why the multifamily is slightly higher per square footage, is because some of the fees are based on a per capita basis, and the persons per household factor is slightly higher when we're looking at multifamily or residential, but the unit size is lower for multifamily, so the actual amount of the fee will be significantly lower when you multiply that fee for a multifamily unit. And then commercial is the highest fee, followed by office, and then industrial. As the main driver of the non-residential fees is really the traffic fees, which is based on trips, based on the 11th generation of the ITE manual, which is a very common way to do development impact fees for transportation. And retail or commercial typically has the most trips, followed by office and then industrial. I'm going to go over a little bit just of information on all of the updated fees and what we did, and then I'm going to go over the 3 new fees. For the public facilities.
I'm sorry, I got to stop you one more time.
Yeah.
We've got, obviously, a lot of students out here from the high schools, I'm assuming. So anytime you use ITE, I'm gonna ask you to state what those are instead of acronyms,
Yeah.
so that they know what's going on and they can report back that they paid attention. ITE, PCE, CPI, ENR, so if you can do that for us tonight, that would be great.
Yeah. I believe I said the engineering news record construction cost index.
Yeah, but what is ITE?
Yeah, I was just repeating it for them. And then the ITE is the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Had to think about that one for a second. Sometimes when you use acronyms all the time, you start to forget what they actually stand for. For the public facilities and park in lieu fees, the public facility fee is collected from new development for passive and active park facilities. So this does not include land, it's just for the construction of parks, as well as community recreation facilities. So it's 2 components, park construction as well as recreation facilities. And then the park in lieu fee is the park acquisition or park land fee. A developer for this fee can either dedicate land or pay this in lieu fee. It's also sometimes called the Quimby fee, if you're familiar with that at all, which is an ordinance that is another way to dedicate or pay the fee. For both of these fees, they only apply to residential development, which is common for these type of fees, as residents are really the ones that are using the park and recreation facilities. The workers are not utilizing these facilities as much, so it's harder to make a nexus to the workers for both of these fees, so they're only applied to residential development. It's also based on the planned facilities methodology, so we're looking at what are the planned facilities like the Santee Community Center, as well as using the general plan standard that your city has adopted for parks, which is 5 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents, which is the typical methodology for these type of fees. And there's additional in the government code for the Mitigation Fee Act under 66006 says that using an adopted general plan standard is a appropriate form for these type of fees. The fee revenues, as I mentioned, will provide funding for the Santee Community Center, as well as at build out about 75 acres of future park facilities and park acquisition. In terms of traffic facilities, the traffic signal fee is collected from new development for the installation of needed traffic signals. And we really worked with the city on the existing traffic signals within the city, as well as a list of planned facilities that were needed to meet the demands at build out for the city of all the different traffic signals. This includes funding traffic signals of 6-phase signals, pedestrian signals, smart signals, fiber optic communication upgrades and updates to signals, as well as signal buttons. This is based on the system plan method, which is another appropriate method for development impact fees. It's also within the template that was provided out of AB 602. And then within this method, we take the existing facilities, the total cost of the existing facilities, and the total cost of planned facilities, and divide it by total development at build-out. So that would include all existing and future residents and workers. For the traffic mitigation fee, this is for the city's citywide traffic infrastructure, and the fee revenues will fund traffic improvements necessary for development to occur. Improvements were provided by the city. We worked with city staff, city engineering. They put a lot of work into figuring out what were the necessary improvements that were needed to serve the growth of the city in terms of transportation improvements, This always tends to be one of the more difficult ones, even with a lot of background documents, so really appreciated staff's hard work on this. This is based on the planned facilities methodology, which we looked at the system plan method a little bit, but we couldn't do the existing level of service or system plan method because the city's existing citywide infrastructure is large and vast, and it's hard to determine the exact cost currently to do either one of those methods. So we did work with city staff to look at some of the other methodologies, but based on the information that we had and the data and the type of methodology, really planned methodology is used when you have a good system of planned facilities. This was the best methodology to use for this type of fee. And the drainage fee. This is the last existing fee. It's collected from new development for the installation of new drainage improvements identified in the city's most recent master plan, as well as we really worked with city staff on the existing and future improvements within the city for the city's drainage fee. And these are all the improvements that will, again, meet the growth of the city. It's based on the existing level of service, so we're taking the existing level of service within the city and projecting that forward. So any new residents and workers are being assessed at the same level of service that the current city is providing in terms of drainage facilities. We reviewed all three, the existing level of service, the system plan, and the planned facilities methodology, and determined the existing level of service was the best methodology to use for numerous reasons. One of those is because when we were looking at the existing level of service, that really netted us the most fee revenue, and we're taking the existing level of service and projecting that forward. So we're not asking any future residents or workers to pay for anything more than what the city is already currently providing to the existing development. As well as when we're looking at planned facilities methodology, we can't take any of those costs that are attributable to existing deficiencies and attribute that to new development. So that's why it netted a little bit less than actually looking at the existing level of service. And there's a lot of reasons that this fee decreased. I don't know if you've looked at the Nexus study or looked at any of the fees, but this is the only fee that actually went down compared to the rest of the fees going up. One of those reasons is there's less impervious acres remaining within the city, so there's less to divide that total cost by. Really, when we're looking at the remaining growth of the city now compared to 2005, there's less growth, but there's also significantly less impervious area. And this is the only fee that's based on impervious area. That's how the drainage fee is calculated. And we're looking at the previous drainage facilities built and the remaining necessary, the amount that's attributable to new development, existing deficiencies, some of the updated assumptions, but really the remaining impervious area. That's why this fee is decreased compared to all of the remaining additional fees going up. So if you have any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer that, but that's the main crux of why this fee went down. I'm going to go over the three new fees. The first fee is a fire facilities fee. This is a proposed new fee that will be collected from development to help fund construction of fire stations and procurement of apparatuses to serve the city. It will be used to fund new development's fair share of their portion of fire facilities, including new fire stations, vehicles, and fire equipment related and required to serve new development. And this is in order to maintain the city's existing level of service. These facilities will be necessary to meet the demand of the growth of the city at build out. And this is based on the system plan method, which I already mentioned a little bit about the system plan method, but this spreads the existing and planned facilities over the total development at build out. And it really ensures that new development only pays their proportional share to the total system costs and is not responsible for rectifying any existing deficiencies. It's appropriate to use this when there's a facility or some type of fee where we're really looking at like the traffic signal or this fee where there's already where new and existing are using these facilities. And so the system plan method really works for a fire facility fee when there's an integrated approach like that. The table over here shows the fire stations and facilities that will be included in the capital improvement plan. There's some new construction for Fire Station 20 and 28, as well as some additional rebuild and replacement. And again, this total cost over here would not be fully attributable to new development. Existing and new are both paying for these. The next fee is a long-range planning fee, another new proposed fee for the purpose of funding updates to the city's general plan as well as the sustainable Santee plan. The general plan is made up of multiple elements that are updated periodically over time to account for changes in the city. You can see under the general plan elements on the table to the right, there's numerous elements that are updated over time. And then the sustainable Santee plan. These long-range planning documents are vital to really ensure that the city can meet the needs of the growing community, and therefore we added them into the fee program after numerous research and discussion with city staff. We use the plan facility method, so looking at the costs that we estimated for these future planning documents, and then when we looked at the amount that would be attributable to new development, it was about 19%.
One more time, it was
19?
19% of,
The total amount. And that's based on the future growth of the residents and workers compared to the existing amount of residents and workers. And that amount would be attributable to new development for that fee. Because again, we can't allocate anything that's either considered an existing deficiency, or we have to come up with a methodology to determine what is the fair share for new development. Finally, there's a program administration fee. This is also a very common fee that are included with development impact fees. Sometimes they're included with each fee themselves, but we tend to recommend including it as its own fee. This allows additional flexibility with this fee, and it also ensures an ease of administration as well as a lot of flexibility with using it and some ease in the reporting requirements. We added a 2% program administration fee, and that is to be collected from new development to fund the cost of the city's management and ongoing fee program, administration, collection, and reporting. The industry standard is really about 3 to 6%, and so this is a little below the industry standard at 2%. This includes everything from the Nexus Studies updates every 8 years, which is required, again, by Assembly Bill 602. Assembly Bill 1483 requires every year for the city to do additional posting requirements. That includes putting the Nexus study, anything related to your annual and 5-year reporting requirements, anything related to master plans, and anything related to development impact fees on this city's website. There's annual and 5-year reporting requirements related to development impact fees that this can fund, as well as just this year, there were some additional requirements that were added from Assembly Bill 516 for annual and 5-year reporting. This can fund staff time for fee tracking, fee collection, fee credit and reimbursement agreements, any type of consultant costs related to development and impact fees, any type of legal costs related to development impact fees, master plans that are necessary to update the Nexus study, as well as any other necessary administrative activities to support the fee program. This is based on fee revenue that is a preliminary estimate based on the assumed development. We really looked at, what is the build out of the city, and then we estimated the costs that it would take to administer this fee program. The city does not currently have administrative fees, so it's a little hard to say over the past 8 years or 10 years, this was the cost and this was the revenue. So we were only able to take over the last 2 years what the administrative costs really were for this Nexus study update, but that does not include a lot of the newer requirements, as well as the staff time that will take to do some of the fee credit reimbursements, as well as fee collection and fee tracking, and numerous other activities. And I want to just also point out that when we're looking at the fee revenue generated by all of these fees, it is based on assumed development. There's a lot of things that can happen between now and the build out of the city in terms of what development happens, if different types of development happen, less development happens, more development happens. So we just want to make sure that when you're looking at the report and looking at the amount of revenue compared to the amount of cost, it's a conservative estimate when we're looking at costs and more of an aggressive estimate when we're looking at the revenue generated. And, we did do a cost projection over the last 8 years, and the proposed 2% fee we feel is a really appropriate amount based on the estimated cost and revenue generated. When the city reviews, goes for the next 8-year update, it will be a great time to also review this 2% and see how the cost and revenue are looking at that time. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. So on this table, before I go over it, I do want to mention that in the Nexus study, we had the fund balances that were for the last fiscal year because they were not finalized for this fiscal year. And there, we also had the last fiscal year existing fee because we had the last fiscal year fund balances. That will be updated now that we have that information on the final report. It won't make a significant change in any way, but this percentage might slightly change just because the existing fee will go slightly up with that annual escalation. So that percentage change will go slightly down. As you can see here, there's about a 42 to 36% comparison between existing fee and the proposed fee. Again, these fees have not been updated since 2005 when we met with the BIA, or the Building Industry Association. They were not surprised by this amount. They thought this was, about what they would see, especially as we're adding 3 fees. So we have to remember that we're adding in 3 fees when we're looking at this percentage increase between the fees. The largest increase really is related to park facilities and transportation, which have gone up significantly in cost over time, and we're seeing this all across California in terms of fee increases as well as cost increases. There's also been a lot of additional legislative changes that have changed not only the methodology, but the type of costs and different methodologies and assumptions that go into impact fees since the 2005 update. When we're looking at non-residential, commercial is going up about 50%, industrial is going up about 27%, and office is going up 144%. And office is going up significantly more than the other 2 land uses because the amount of office development remaining within the city is significantly less than the other 2 land uses. So there's significantly less to divide the cost by, as well as there's been other assumption changes over time since 2005, including the employees per square foot and the trip assumptions that are used in those traffic numbers since 2005. They've changed a lot. So those 2 assumptions plus the amount that we have to divide the cost by, the amount of growth, is a lot less than what was used in the 2005 report. So that's the difference between the other land uses. In terms of the adoption schedule, we reached out to the development community in September and really worked on finalizing the report. We are here in October. You're all here with me. And then hopefully we'll be back in November for the public hearing, and my hope is that we'll have the fee adoption then. The fees go into effect 60 days after the city's final action for adoption, so that would be January of 2025 is when they'd be effective if they go into adoption. The one last thing, I'm sure you're starting to get sick of me talking, but the last thing I want to go over is the comparison to surrounding jurisdictions in terms of the feasibility and looking at the different fees. One thing that I do want to point out is while we have the last fiscal year of the existing fees within the Nexus study, we did update those into these comparisons to this fiscal year. So they're They are updated to the most recent amount for Santee's existing fees. It's really hard to do an apples to apples comparison. So when you look at these comparisons, I want to make sure that's really clear. It's every jurisdiction funds their infrastructure in multiple different ways. Some jurisdictions fund it with a lot of CFDs, and that's a community facilities district. Some jurisdictions use development agreements or use conditions of approval to fund their infrastructure. Some, instead of having citywide development impact fees, have more specific plan area fees. And so that's really one of the many reasons it's hard to do apples to apples. There's also the differences in the amount of build out within an area and then when they've last updated their fees. We tried to include similar surrounding jurisdictions that may compete for development, but that doesn't mean that the type of development impact fees they have are the most apples to apples for comparison. It's really hard to get that. We did exclude water and sewer fees, as a lot of the other jurisdictions do not. They have outside agencies that provide water or sewer, and so they're not city fees, and the city has no control over those fees. And so we just made the determination that we're only including city fees for each of the cities. We excluded the city of El Cajon from the fee comparison completely. We did look at it because their funding of public infrastructure is really processed on a case-by-case basis in our research using development agreements and individualized strategies instead of the programmatic approach, a development impact fee, and it made for less of a close comparison to this city. We included La Mesa, but they only charge residential fees, so they do not charge any non-residential development impact fees, so you only see them on the non-residential charts. And they only have the park and lieu and the regional transportation fee. A lot of the jurisdictions have not updated their fees in 10 plus years at least. So when we're looking at this, Poway has not updated most of their fees since 2006, similar to the city of Santee. La Mesa was back in about 2005, exactly around the same time as Santee. When we're looking at Chula Vista, they updated their public facilities fees and other fees in 2006, but they did update their transportation fee in 2015. So again, most of these fees have not been updated in at least 10 years or more than that. And so when we're looking at the proposed fees, these are fees that are recently updated, while most of the jurisdictions have not updated theirs in a long time. Just to help, the green line is the proposed fee and the orange one is the existing fee for the city. For a single family residential, on this chart you can see that it's pretty much in line outside of Poway and La Mesa, and same with multifamily, and around, if not slightly above the average. As I mentioned, La Mesa really only has 2 fees on the residential side, and Poway only has a few development impact fees. So when we're looking at those apples to apples comparison, they do have other funding sources for their infrastructure that is pulling down the amount of development impact fees that they have. Chula Vista just updated their annual escalation on October 1st, which is included in here, so they just went through their annual escalation factors. This is a comparison again between commercial and office. Looking at this chart for commercial, again, we do not have La Mesa on the non-residential, as they do not charge non-residential fees, but Chula Vista is around the same, or if not more, for most of these than Santee, and then we kind of go down the line from there. For office, Santee is the highest, but as I mentioned, there's been a lot of updates in the methodology of how to calculate office fees over the last 20 years, and none of these fees have been updated in the past 10 to 20 years. So that makes sense of why Santee would be a little bit on the higher side for office. And then finally, industrial, where the proposed fee is right in line with the other agencies, if not lower. And that really brings me to the end of my presentation. I'm sure you have maybe some questions, and probably ready for me to be done speaking for a bit, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, or, if there's any ones that are related more for the city, I'll be happy to answer the development impact fee ones specifically.
Thank you. Any speaker slips?
No, sir.
Thank you. Council comments? I know you have some questions. I'll let you go first tonight.
You want me to go first?
I think you probably wrote down many of the same ones I did, so.
All right, so the ENR report, or numbers that you get, I actually like that because everything I've ever done, I'm in finance is my background, so everything I've ever done is CPI. So especially in recent years with construction cost and material costs and all that kind of stuff going up as significantly as it has, even maybe surpassing CPI in many occasions, I'd like to have that added into our Heather, like I'd like updates, more regular updates on what that index is doing on a regular basis. So it adds to our information. It's like when we base things on CPI, not everything directly correlates to CPI. So I would like to have that added because I feel ignorant, but I'd never heard of that index before. The fire facilities fees, I'm in support of that because that should have been done. That should have been done years ago, as it provides for population growth in the city rather than stagnation. And if there is no growth, then it just what we did in the past. If there is no growth, it just then it's status quo. But the reality is things still continue to escalate. Cost of labor, cost of insurance, cost of everything continues to escalate. So I do like having that in there. Where I do have some consternation is in the long-range planning fees and the program admin fees. Those sound like makeup fees for us not properly planning in the past. I'm not a big fan of adding those two fees.
I will say that the
Hold
admin.
on. You
okay.
said you could not determine the cost of admin. Well, that's what this whole thing was supposed to be doing, is to determine, like, we're not sitting here and trying to make money make money on a development. The city of Santee, like, we don't get to bring home any extra money if we make $1 bazillion for the city and charge an exorbitant amount of money. Our job is to try to balance everything out so that we're
Revenue neutral.
Yeah, revenue neutral. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that we're revenue neutral. The idea of doing these reports is exactly to figure out what the admin fees are. So to hear you say that we can't determine what admin fees are, I've got an issue with that.
Yeah, can I respond to that?
Please.
So what I said, or what I meant, was we did do a whole analysis on what it would take over the next 8 years, and it is within the Nexus study, to do a Nexus update over the next 8 years. And then we looked at staff time, estimated staff time, and then we looked at 2 master plans over the next 8 years that would support the Nexus study. There would be a need for more master plans, so we're looking at not doing those every 8 years, but doing those over a longer process. And so not doing a master plan required for the Nexus study every time there's an update. Then we looked at the additional, the cost that it takes for staff to do the annual reporting requirements, as well as the 5-year reporting requirements. And then we took all those costs. What I was saying is there's additional reporting requirements that came out this year. There's going to be additional legislative requirements that are related to the annual and 5-year reporting. And it's difficult to estimate exactly what it's going to cost to administer this fee exactly in terms of staff time, because staff hasn't ever tracked their time in terms of when they're processing developer agreements when they're processing how much they spent on fee and credit reimbursement agreements. So we estimated it as close as possible. In the future, once staff tracks their time, it'll be closer to an exact number, but we estimated it as close as possible that we could with the information provided by the finance department, as well as our best estimates in terms of costs. So we did come up with a reasonable estimate of what it would take over the 8 years to really capture all of the costs. We had costs related to legal over the last few years, as well as staff time, but it didn't capture a lot of the costs that really are going to go into the administrative component of this fee. And so we made a few estimates and assumptions that we always do within any type of analysis. There's industry assumptions that we're going to make that are based on all of the best available data. And given that, we came up with a 2%, which is significantly lower than almost every jurisdiction. Typically, it's about 5% for the industry standard's 3 to 6, but it's typically about 5% necessary to really support this type of a development impact fee program. There's quite a few fees, and especially if there's dedications going on instead of building park facilities and other.
All right.
Yeah.
So all our attorney's fees are oftentimes, those are cost neutral because don't we capture those when we have developments and they have?
Yeah, for most developments that have a deposit, those are captured. But I think there are additional costs that the city pays that are rolled up into the administrative fee.
The concept of this.
Yes, when we gave some hard numbers, so
Yeah.
that was included in the estimate. Is some of the hard numbers that we bill to the city that the city actually pays.
And we've never apparently paid attention to admin costs. We had never tracked it.
I can't speak to that specifically,
You
but
said that we
I don't
don't
know
have-
that it was never tracked. I don't know if it was ever paid attention to.
Okay, so for me,
Councilmember McNellis, I can comment on that.
Please.
So we have a lot more reporting requirements we have to do now. So in the past, the last Nexus study was in 2005. So we haven't been doing an updated Nexus study. We haven't been doing, I did the presentation about a month and a half ago on the DIF study, or not the DIF study, but just the annual update. These are the kinds of things that you didn't have, we didn't have to do in the past. So there's more staff time, there's more attorney time. And now with the AB 602, we have to do that Nexus study every 8 years. So part of what's in this admin fee is the amortization of this of that cost.
estimate of the amortization of that cost.
Yes, and the amortization with a 3% escalator.
Okay. The other thing I just got to comment on, like you said, CFDs are often ways of doing that. Well, we only have one development that I know of in Santee, and that's the Weston development that has a CFD, and that's because we hadn't built anything. We had no master plan communities in Santee in basically the modern era that has CFDs. So that's the reason that we don't have that, is because we haven't had any major developments in Santee. Moving forward, we probably would do that because that's the new norm of building at least in Southern California.
Well, if there's any,
So that would contribute to that because that's what the new development is. If you're doing this study based on what we did in the past, we didn't have that in the past because we haven't had any developments in the modern age of CFDs.
so my comment
That make sense?
on that was that in the past, when other cities, they may have utilized CFDs instead of impact fees, and that's why their fees are lower, because those facilities would have been funded through that mechanism, so they wouldn't have had to use the development impact fees citywide to fund those facilities. They would have funded it through.
I
And so-
appreciate that, and that's why I'm looking, and then that brings me to the next thing. Looking at if you could bring up those charts again, of the surrounding jurisdictions comparisons. I mean, these are significant. These are significant. They're significant. Santee is significantly higher than surrounding jurisdictions, other than Chula Vista.
Well, they're all behind doing their 8-year
But
requirement, so
they
they're
actually
going to go up.
Hold
Yeah.
on,
I'm
but they
hoping.
actually do have CFDs in these areas. We haven't, other than one development, and that was actually developed by the city of San Diego. We just adopted it, annexed it, to be exact. So Chula Vista's had CFDs forever, and how you can build down there, I don't know. I don't want to be that city where we are the most expensive to build in second most expensive to build in San Diego. This is a
If I may comment on the CFD, if there's a CFD form that includes the facilities that are within this Nexus study, then there would be a credit and reimbursement agreement done. And any facility that is built by that developer, they would not pay the fee. They would build that facility within that CFD, or there would be an agreement that way. So we're not going to double charge new development.
fair enough. That makes this even a bigger differentiation between the other cities and the city of Santee. I mean,
Well, then you're getting the revenues either way.
yeah, this is significant, guys. Like I said, we have been behind the eight ball for so many years on the fire facilities fees. We've talked about it ad nauseum about where we were with that, and that we needed to figure out a way. And I appreciate bringing that into this and a new way besides just the fire impact fee. What do we have? What was it called, Chief? Fire benefit fee. Thank you. Which got capped out in what year? 84?
It's been stagnant, still at $41.
Yeah. So, because we hadn't done any nexus to any escalator for that, and that's the reason. So I appreciate building that into this, and I totally appreciate building escalators into everything that we do going forward, because things aren't getting cheaper to build, things are getting cheaper to insure, things aren't getting cheaper, land's not getting cheaper. I totally get that, but adding new fees is very difficult for me. The traffic mitigation fees, I understand that, and I just want to make another comment to Min G. You've heard me say it 1,000 times. You probably can even recite what I'm about to say. What kind of traffic signals? Yes. And when I say smart traffic signals, I don't mean that we can program them. I mean the ones that in today's world utilize the AI and start to understand traffic patterns within the city. That stuff will go so much further for us as a city to help us with our circulation patterns than almost anything else. And that's one of the biggest complaints I get from people is how much traffic we have in Santee because of all the development that we have. And all of us sitting up here know we have not done a whole lot of development in Santee. It's the traffic because of the utilization of apps that drive people through our city and utilizing our side streets, and the signals themselves. When somebody comes up and hits the little button because they want to walk across the street, we got to give them a little extra time to walk across the street. That takes off the traffic pattern. But all these apps that are not apps, I'm sorry, all these programs that they now have in the traffic signal world make this better, and they get smarter, and they continue to do better for our circulation. So I love looking at that and being cognizant of that. But I got problems with the long range planning fee and the program admin fee. If we're not, that should be already built into our other fees that we already have as just part of doing business. To add another fee, it just makes it makes it look like we're just gouging left and right. And two, I think we're patting the coffers a little bit, and I'm not a fan of that. So that's my opinion. I'm one of 5, and I will shut up now.
Do you want us to weigh in on the long-range planning fee and part of the reason behind why we're looking at it? Yeah, I think one of the things that other jurisdictions, City of San Diego, Stockton, Rancho Cucamonga, they all have this general plan fee, long-range planning fee, and it's really to recover some of the unfunded mandates that we get from the state to do things like update our open space element, right? Like, we would have had a normal pattern that we would have updated that within our cycle, but now state law is requiring that we do it by January of 2026. So we're accelerating that, and part of that is because they see the need to do that at sort of a statewide level, and they're giving us this unfunded mandate, now go update your element. So we're trying to ensure that when we do see these increases in population because of development, that we have a way to fund some of those efforts that the state's requiring us to do.
So, all right, I'll respond to that. We should be doing that. We should be looking forward. We should be looking at these types of studies constantly. But I don't know that we should be doing that on the back of developers. We should. That's right. We should be doing that more often. It's bad that we haven't updated our master plan in how long? And what did that cost us? Prop N? Like, we should have done this, and we didn't. I'm partially to blame for that because I didn't push hard enough to get that done either. So, but that's upon us. That's not upon the developers to fund that. That's upon us to say this is a priority, and we need to do that out of the money that we already have coming in. I still have a problem with those two things, but that's
I
it.
will say that over 81, I think it's 81% of that fee is funded from other funding sources. It's only 19% of that total amount that is funded by new development, and that's looking at the proportional share. And when we're looking at these documents, I just wanted to add on, these are really documents that really support the growth within the city that we're looking at and determining growth patterns. When we're
Fair
looking at
enough, but I'm
general
looking
plan.
at these, I mean, the charts are, that makes it very clear. Where
Again, as I'm-
is Santee existing versus Santee proposed versus other jurisdictions? And you said that you've pulled out other places. I really would have actually liked to see what El Cajon does.
That's the only one we pulled out. But yes, it's very hard, as I mentioned, to get really an apples to apples comparison. We still want to include it, but this is very difficult when you're looking at Santee proposed compared to really anywhere else. It is very difficult in fee comparisons. I've been doing this almost 20 years, and I've said apples to apples comparison, I think, my whole career. It is hard when we're looking at one jurisdiction to another to really determine exactly what new development is paying in one comparable city to another. So I understand and I hear everything you're saying. I'm just trying to add a little additional context.
I was looking at La Mesa. Like, that's a $30,000 swing.
And again, they only include two fees, and one's a regional fee. So they have just a park and lieu fee, so.
Well, and to speak to the La Mesa fee as the former assistant director, it's also because when they're looking at development, they're assessing what the impact is going to be on that property. So way that they may not pay $38,000, but they're going to pay for the infrastructure that their project is going to contribute to. It's just not allocated in the same way that we're trying to allocate it here. It's done by, them actually going and doing sewer studies and looking at their existing and what the future is going to be. So they still do receive additional funds outside of these fees. They're just not captured in the same way that we're trying to capture them now.
So when we're trying to be a builder-friendly community, are they looking at these fees or are they looking at overall? Like,
Typically, they look
I
at their
think it's
overall
in
pro forma
total.
of all the fees.
Mr. Developer, what do you think?
Well, I actually want to go last on this item, but I did have that exact question, is that why don't we have data from all 18 cities in the county here? I'm looking at 5. There's 18 cities in this county. So I think this is not enough information for us to even give you an answer tonight until you guys.
Keep in mind,
come
it's
back
a
and give an
workshop.
answer.
Yeah,
I know, but I'm saying, it's like, I don't even have enough data here to even make an educated decision.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll
come back
come
to
back,
that one.
we'll give direction to put other things in the study. So, okay, Laura?
Okay, well, this is the problem with not updating your diff fees for so long. But we're not the only city guilty of this, obviously, as
Widespread.
given by the data. It's
Yeah.
widespread. There is a mandate now. And I actually did write down unfunded mandate, so same page, working for a water district before in conjunction with this job for some time. The DIF fees, which are not as extensive at a water district as they are for a city, they are updated every year, and a comprehensive study was done. So it was more current. So that's why when I got on council, I was kind of surprised that, I don't know, things seemed a little odd to me, and I think I probably spoke about it every year. So I do think that the 3 additional fees are appropriate. The first clue is, for me, and I'll preface this with saying I did meet with the team, not this Monday, but the prior Monday, to go over the report so I could understand it more before tonight and talk through some of these, questions that I had. Everybody, the fact that we haven't been charging an admin fee is an anomaly. Like we should have been charging one the whole time. There is staff time, there's unfunded mandates, they keep coming and coming and coming. You could see by the list of things that staff must do. I even wrote down I had a question even about some other fees that I was aware of that at the water district were calculated into the admin fee, just to make sure we are capturing that as well, which, Heather did confirm we were. So it's not profitable for the admin fee, it's the cost of doing business, and it's not even capturing our full cost of doing business. It's the low estimate at 2%. As was mentioned, the average is 5%. We've seen some other admin fees for oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on what it is. Staff time costs money. So when we do, and software costs money to do payment processing and all those things. Like if you look at in total, all the things that a development touches along the city, and all the people that must review that is staff time. The fire department has to review it. Every single department head here has to review a development, and then the city attorney, but that's separate. So we are on the low end of the admin fee. If you look at what was it, item 9, talks about the grant funding. If you remember, a couple of meetings ago, we were told we weren't going to be able to update this portion of our general plan because the state took away the funding from Sandag, so therefore we wouldn't have the $680,000 to update it. And now, well, it is back in because the state decided to give us the money this time. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But we need to update our general plan, this element of it. So we're not asking future development to pay a disproportionate share of the, unfunded portion that we haven't done for many, many years, decades. But we need to start with future development collecting their share, and we're going to have to backfill it with our own revenue. Which, that is where we're at. I need to put on my glasses because I wrote notes everywhere. And I wrote down Measure N, that's a concern. But what I asked, so I had 3 questions after my review. What's the difference for fiscal year 24 DIF fee revenue as currently priced to what the new updated fees would have generated? And so Heather did that calculation, and the difference, basically, in my opinion, the money left on the table because we haven't updated our fee structure in so long, is $1.6 million if we had these fees in place last year, 1.66. Other things were just minor, so not important. But that, as a city, revenue is how we pay for services. All of these different cities, it is not apples to apples. They all have different ways of collecting those revenues that are not reflected here. All that's reflected here is the DIF fee. Like Sandy said, they're not Poway and La Mesa are healthy cities financially, so they must be collecting the fees in other ways. I mean, I don't know what all the ways are, and that's why you can't do apples to apples. But I'll just go back to, once again, the fact that the BIA had 0 questions about this, and they reviewed the fee and they had it first, or the report and they had it first, tells me that we're on the right path. And I don't think we're gouging or overcharging. I think we're charging appropriately new development in the way that we charge developments the appropriate fees. So that's my feedback.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
So on the proposed development impact fees, you don't have ADUs in there. Is that done the same way as a single-family residence?
So there's, it's 881 for ADUs. Anything that's under 750 square feet cannot be charged by law a development impact fee. And then above 750 square feet is proportional to the single-family dwelling unit. And then unless the city makes it a different policy.
I thought we talked about that recently.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, because I was going to ask that same question.
Yeah, 'cause
That, we are looking for direction eventually from
Yeah.
council on that.
Talked about this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so we previously had a waiver of fees for ADUs that is now expired. And so we are seeking direction about how you want to approach that. We can do it separately, or we can kind of roll it all together. But we do, there'll be some ADU stuff coming back to you in the next month or so. So if you do give direction, we can include it. If not, we can pick it up later.
But again, anything under 750 square feet, no matter what, is not charged.
Okay, so a 1,200 square foot ADU, how does that get charged?
Right now, without any other things from city direction, it would be above the 750, then that would be charged that amount above that 750 proportional to that rate, proportional to the single family, but just that above that 750.
Per square foot?
Per square foot, yeah, above the 750.
Right.
750 is the wash.
Right, everything above they get charged for. Okay, so on this fee comparison that we're looking at right here for the residential, over here, it says unit, so how does this equate to square footage? Is this an average of something like 2,000 square feet, or how does this?
So we're using, right, our assumption there is based on the Nexus study, and we have 2,200 square feet for a single family and 1,600 square feet for multifamily. The reason we did keep it on a per unit basis just for this presentation is because all the other jurisdictions are still charging it on a per unit basis. And our Nexus study does go from a per unit to then a per square footage basis. And so we're able to do a comparison a little bit more easily for your review on a per unit basis. But it is based, all of them are based on a 2,200 square foot single family or a 1,600 square foot multifamily unit.
This slide is not in our presentation.
This was just an additional slide I included if you had a question on it.
I'm missing half the info, okay. Thank you.
It's included as a table within the Nexus study, both of these.
Okay, thank you. So again, I made a comment of, actually go back to the CFDs. I think a couple of you guys threw up different numbers. We have more than one CFD in the city currently?
We actually have 3. We've got the 2 Weston CFDs. So the one Weston is the infrastructure CFD, and then we have the municipal services CFD, which does not, the infrastructure one will expire, it's 30 years long. The muni one is indefinite, so it covers about $120,000 a year in city services.
Okay, and the third
And then
one?
we have a stormwater CFD, which is very small. No, El Nepal.
Yeah, and but it is one that others have annexed into. So it's up to the developer, but certain developers have pursued that or asked that it be something that they could annex into. So it's definitely more than one that's annexed into that. I can't remember the exact details. It was started with one development, but others have annexed into it.
But again, impact fees, just want to be clear, cannot cover services, so.
Understood. So that was one of my comments. Why don't we have data from all 18 cities opposed to 5, including ours?
Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, we do look at about 6 jurisdictions, and that, was included in our analysis. And so that's what we, started with the city. If that's something that we want to look at further, I can talk to Heather and Aaron about that. And
I can actually add to that too. We just looked at cities that we normally compare other
Yeah.
things to, and we gave that recommendation to the consultant as staff to try and keep similar sized cities, because it's really hard to compare a city of San Diego to a city of Santee or
Well, we have one
Encinitas
neighborhood
and-
in San Diego on this study.
Yeah, and I think that was because that was isolated with some newer
Yeah.
development, and it was a new development we can compare directly to. Because
I-
there's so many different subdevelopments and different agreements, because often other cities, like we talk about the disparity of apples to apples, some other cities make you do all the improvements before you can get occupancy. We don't do that, and developers often tell me, I want to know what my cost is going in, I'd rather give you the money up front.
Yeah, and that
And
actually
then
goes
they
to,
know what our dollars are, and they don't.
goes to your
they're-
statement there, Carl. Is that can you go back to the one with the per unit deal?
yeah,
Resident is kind of to the point right there. This is only showing the fees that are charged by each city. It doesn't
Correct.
show the actual impact that
Correct.
per unit, I guess you
Correct.
would say.
Because
or
it's hard to
develop.
capture because every
that is
development's
part of the
different.
problem here is that we're not looking at, like you said, apples for apples. We're only talking about the fees that are charged. So Poway, I'll just use Poway as an example, as a city that is geographically close to us, but also population close to us. Because that's what you were talking about, Carl, is that a lot of times when we do our studies, we want to look at cities that are like for like, right? So those 6 cities that we know that have similar populations, well, Chula Vista's not even in the same ballpark as us either. So I don't, right. So if you want to take San Diego out, I'll at least agree with you on that
we
one.
added Chula Vista because once we found out El Cajon didn't do it and some of the other cities, we said, let's try and
Yeah.
pick the next one that's closest that does things similar. So during the Nexus study, we actually, staff met with the consultant and we fine-tuned that a little better so we can try and give you a better comparison.
So let me
Just
ask
because
you-
the cost associated with
Let me ask you,
magnifies.
So does the county charge different across the county in different areas of the county, or is it one fee for the county?
That I couldn't say because we didn't include them in the study. That's
understand.
why we had the consultant do it, because it gets so varied, and we're not experts on all those different ones. And they had to put a lot of research and time and money and effort into that. That's why we kept it small, because otherwise we could spend a lot of money doing a lot of analysis, but we tried to find ones that were, what we knew at the time, before the study was done, were the most similar in our eyes, because we don't know what all those city fees were, other than just going to their web pages and looking at them and how do they do it.
yeah, along the lines of that, I just wanted to add, we really tried to stick with citywide ones where, adding on to what Carl was saying, there was certain jurisdictions that really had more specific plan areas instead of citywide fees, so it was harder when we were really dwindling down and looking at the comparison areas, but we did work together to make this list.
Yeah, one or two things either happen here, in my opinion here, is either we need more data from more cities, or we need the actual data that compares the actual impacts per unit here. Because we're literally talking only about the fees that are charged and not the actual impacts of a single-family home being built or multifamily or so on. So, yeah, the actual cost of building, what is the direct impact to the developer to build in that jurisdiction? I mean, that's what we're really talking about here, because when you do look at the chart, you look at some major disparities here, and then, City of Santee, I mean, we're, just a single family, we're looking at adding $8,000 increase to, and we all know where that goes. It goes to the consumer. The developer's not gonna,
That was literally Mike. I said,
Right, so
development impact fees come down to the consumer, more difficult to buy. That
Right,
was my
so,
next
just
note.
adding to the cost of, obviously, the development, but again, obviously, we're looking at it as, cost recovery and a lot of the other things that we have to look at. Can you explain to me why we had an 82% reduction in drainage fees?
Yeah, as I mentioned when I was discussing I'll go back to that slide as well, just to pull it up. One of the main reasons that we had such a reduction in the drainage fees is really the remaining impervious area within the city. So when this study was done back in 2005, And now looking at the remaining impervious area that we're able to take the total cost, there's also a lot of additional necessary drainage facilities necessary for the growth of the city, but there's a lot of less impervious area that we can really take that cost over. And we're looking at the existing level of service. And so we're having to project that existing level of service forward. But when we're looking at how much we can attribute to new development, there's not that much additional new development because it's based on impervious surface.
Carl, what does the drainage fee typically cover, or what do we do with that money?
Right now, we use it for deficient facilities. And to expand upon what Megan was saying, the reason why, if you recall, we had to do a drainage master fee study. The last time we did one was 1996. And the drainage hydrology manual has changed 3 times since that. So the way we calculate the capacity of the storm drain and the actual peak discharges has changed 3 times since we last did it. And the way the drainage impact fees were kind of collected and the way the fee was established, I just know because I happened to be here when we did that fee study, and that was one of the things I was working on. We went to the BIA, and the amount of money we came up with, they said, no way are we going to accept that? And we just said, what's the average? And that's what we came to city council with, because we couldn't collect all the money. And what it was based on was the 1996 study, a cost escalator for the true construction cost at the time of 2005. And then we said new development has to fund all of those. We can't do that anymore since this new law. It's only attributable to that deficient area and the direct nexus to that developer. And we had heartburn working with Megan, and she probably wasn't happy with us fighting on it.
You actually hit it right there. So
Yeah.
it's attributed to the new law and what we can charge to the developer for the development of that, or the impact of that development, not necessarily the infrastructure that we currently have today. Replacement of the CMP pipes or anything else, right? Where we're going.
Well, yeah, because right now, when we do use drainage impact fees for CMPs, but only for pipes that are deficient, meaning not maintenance deficient, but deficient in capacity only.
Right,
Otherwise, we have to use other funding sources.
Increasing the load, you got to go 60-inch to 84-inch or whatever.
So when we do the CMP pipes, we have to be very careful how we spend the money on how it qualifies. And we work with Heather and our team carefully to apply that money to make sure we're following the rules. Now the rules are changed on us. It's even going to get harder because we didn't stress much. We can't charge staff time anymore. That was a big chunk of the cost that we could then charge back to those programs. We can't do that anymore either.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And I did put up just the list of the
Thank you.
future facilities.
So we can't charge staff time on any fees or?
On just capital improvements.
On capital improvements. On capital improvement funds. Okay, or fees. All right, fair enough. But on development fees, you're clearly charging staff time.
Yeah, we try to do full cost recovery on
Exactly.
those.
And that's hence the reason I'm talking about the other things.
Oh, and I was going to mention with the CI or with the diff over at the water district, just to your point about like how do you track this for the admin fee? Literally in their time cards, they can code to it, and that's a tracking mechanism. Probably the developers do it all the time, billable time, but it could be something that.
Yeah, we have something similar.
Okay.
We do track it for projects and for developers, but we don't break it down on what the administration cost of the program. It's just attributable to the work we do just on their project alone.
Billable hours.
That's the disconnect that we have right now for the admin fee, because we're just doing that on our time and billing it against the general fund right now.
Yeah, and so they could make
Which
a code to track that
is
for the future.
I think is prudent. But the other part, the other last comment I want to make is, when we do, now we're moving to a per square foot basis, and the cost recovery is going to go on a per square foot basis. It's what the analogy is that we're going to push developers to go to smaller square foot and small square foot units and more units, because unit count doesn't count anymore. It's the square footage. So just so you guys know, what this does is that it pushes developers to do more high density.
I was about to get there with the multifamily.
It's telling developers that the city of Santee wants more high density, smaller square foot units, because that's where your bang's going to be here, and moving us away from single-family detached residents that built the city of Santee. That's, we go to this dollar per square foot, that's what this is, that's the end result. It's maybe not the idea. I understand the premise of why you're being forced to do this, but that's, the reality is, this is what's going on.
We're the ultimate decision makers, though, on the development. And so.
So you're going to stop an entire development?
Maybe.
You know, we can. I mean, we can. So how many, huge development, single-family home properties are there left in the city to develop like this that haven't already been, like, we've all seen the housing element. Really what's left are infill projects with multifamily, the majority, or else people building 12, splitting lots, buying residential homes, R1s, splitting lots and building 1,200 square foot ADUs, which is going to be another problem.
ADUs, I understand. That's a different. That's a different
animal.
That's a different.
But
animal.
I mean, the reality of how much we're already built.
Single-family detached homes is what the city of Santee was built on. That's what we try to keep moving forward. And when you move from per unit basis to dollar per square foot basis, you're telling developers get the most bang for your square foot. And how do you do that? Stack and pack. That's how you do it.
No, we don't have to approve stack and pack. We absolutely do not have to approve that. We have, it's still up to our discretion what we allow to be built here. So to me, I'm against stack and pack as well. And you know that. I've said it since day one. But there's some realities about the land that's left to develop housing on in Santee.
We have several proposed projects that are still trying to find their way forward other than the lawsuits, than the lawsuits that they're dealing with, and potentially more in the future, because the reality is more and more people, they want detached houses. That's what people want.
Sure,
That's what
I
they're
agree
looking
with
for.
that. So are we talking about things in the development process now, or is this on a move forward basis?
Move forward basis.
Okay, so I'm only looking at move forward basis developments, not things that are in the queue right now.
Move forward basis. We still do have land outside of Fanita Ranch, outside of Carlton Oaks. There still are spots available, and people want to build detached houses. But if we make it more expensive to build a detached house than we do a attached unit and a smaller unit, then the cost is the cost. It pencils out for them to do that when we have people that would prefer in the city of Santee to have a detached house. That's the reason we live in them.
My recollection of what's left to develop in that scenario, my recollection is not, huge swaths of land to build.
I'm not saying thousands of units per acre. I'm talking about, unless we go this direction, I'm talking about there are parcels that could be developed. Go up Summit, go on down Prospect. There are parcels that could be, even accumulated together, where you've got one unit on an acre or half an acre, and developers are buying up all of them together and still building and want to build detached houses. And now you're on 6,000 square foot lots instead of half acre lots. Got it. Those things are still available, but when we kind of push them towards this direction.
Well, but that's what zoning's for, R1, R2, R7, R30. I mean, you can't build R30 on R1.
No, but you can, 6,000 square foot lots are.
Well, what's the point of building, a 600 or, 800 square foot home on a R1, like on a small, I just don't get, I don't understand.
You wouldn't build a 600 square foot home. You'd build that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't do that. You'd rather go with higher density.
But it's not zoned for that.
Because a 2,000 square foot house, based on if we're going by square foot rather than a unit, costs more than the unit cost.
I think they're, for a developer, and I'm not a developer, so, I'm just thinking.
I wish we knew one.
Me too.
Well, just let me finish my thought. I don't understand why you would build on an R1 zoning, a small home and have all this land around it, to me, it seems like a waste. And wouldn't pencil out, like the return on investment, to your point, people don't want to buy that. Now, if they're looking for, a multifamily and a 2 or 3 story kind of place, and they don't want a yard, they don't want the maintenance, if that's what they're looking for, or maybe that's the more affordable price point, then I get that. I just don't know why. So sure, perhaps somebody else on this council can answer that for me, or maybe staff, but I don't understand
Well,
that
no one
this
would
is an
build a
issue for the
600
city.
square foot unit. They would build.
I misspoke. I didn't mean 600 square feet. I just meant, like, who would build like an 1,100 square foot home on an R1 today? Which mine was an 1,100 square foot home back in the 50s. So things are cyclical, I guess.
If it becomes cost ineffective to build more than 1,200 square foot, and you can get 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and 1,200 square feet, but if it was a per unit cost, it was basically the same cost to do 18 or 12 or 2,000 square feet. Why add more material costs from 1,200 to 2,000?
Because you can charge more for it. I mean, that's the bottom line, is if somebody wants a 2,400 square foot home and it costs more, they're going to pay for it.
We're at $800,000 for a 1,200 square foot place in today's world in Santee. Hold on, $800,000, and then we're at $950 for 2,000 square feet. The dollar per square foot doesn't match out.
And what's that in Poway and what's that in La Mesa?
I'm talking about Santee.
Well, but sometimes we are talking about Santee and sometimes we're talking about Poway and La Mesa. So either we're talking about one or the other.
We could be talking about them if you want to, but the reality is that
it costs big dollars everywhere
the
in
cost
San Diego
to build,
County.
the cost to build.
Can I finish now?
Please.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because if you weren't, I was going to finish it.
Well, I only got 2 more slides left here, so. The other comments, I mean, looking at this, I mean, there's an increase of $8,000 on a single-family home, $7,000 on a multifamily unit, but can you go to the next slide, please? I mean, this is where it's a huge disparity. I mean, we go from 66,000. Can you explain this impact fee per acre comparison?
What would you like me to explain?
I mean,
Why
this
it's on
this
a
is
per-
non-residential, so I'm assuming you're talking commercial, industrial.
The first slide is commercial. The second one is office. It says commercial on the top of it. And so the first one, we're looking at the commercial per acre fee. And that is basically the average is $152,000 per acre. And we're looking at the proposed and the existing on the left side when I say first one. That's the commercial compared to the surrounding jurisdictions. And then we have office on the right side.
Okay, so I get my question more is, it's a fee per acre, but what does this give you? A building that's 1,000 square feet, a 200,000 square foot building? Like, how does this equate to an acre, to a building?
Yeah, so for office, we have a 100,000 square foot office. We have a 50,000 square foot commercial building. And I'll double confirm these for you. And then on industrial, I also believe we have a 100,000 square foot building.
Thank you. And again, this is the data that wasn't provided to us. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah,
It
so
was in the
there
slides you
is a
showed
full
after.
backup table that we can also provide with this information with a lot of footnotes and assumptions.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did also, I think, wanted to say one thing that came to me while I was, I said the persons per household was higher and I meant lower for multifamily. That came to my mind while I was speaking. So I just wanted to correct myself on that one note.
Okay. Well, I can tell you it's been such a robust discussion that most of my questions that I wasn't really sure how we're going to do these were answered, actually. And really that was about, especially like facility fees and things like that. And do we expect that there's an ongoing fee that's going to be used? That's why we would collect it over years, because I know we can't collect certain fees and just hold on to them forever anymore. And so just like fire fee, once we're finished with all the, rebuild and new build, and how long can we collect those fees and hold on to them? Or is it going to be reinvested every couple of years into maintenance and upkeep, whether it would be, HVAC systems or otherwise, or new code compliance measures that would be handed down, like before you just started your engine, you didn't plug it into the exhaust and all that. There could be things coming down the pike. So is that what that would cover, is things like that maybe? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
If you're asking me like what it would cover, my simple answer is this. 50 years from now, I do not want the fire chief to be in the situation that I am in today. Right. And so lots of unanticipated costs. Our infrastructure 50 years from now, right? Even if we build a brand new station today, which would be phenomenal. And let's say there is a bucket of money that did come to fruition, which would be amazing. 50 years from now, we're going to be at the restarting point again and have to replace almost everything that we build today. And that money that accumulates over that time, and I'm just using an arbitrary figure, 50 years, would then allow the person in my position to be able to right-size any purchases and the replacement of anything that is necessary.
Okay, now, I absolutely understand that, and I think that's the way it's been described. I guess the question, Sean, is, though, that with this new ruling about if you don't use it, you have to give it back, the impact fees back. So how would that affect this?
Because, the reality is you're going to be doing this every 8 years. You're going to be relooking at these things, so you're going to be constantly right-sizing and addressing your fees, and they're tied into the capital improvement requirements. So you're going to... For all the problems that the new law creates, it definitely is bringing together and requirements of more regular planning so that you won't be waiting, 20 years to update your fees. You're going to be doing it on a regular basis. So you're going to be right-sizing it as you go forward. But I would like to hear Megan's answer.
Yeah, as part of the annual requirements for AB 1600, as well as the 5-year requirements, it is required for every jurisdiction to include all of the projects that are planned to be funded with the fee revenue. And so as you're collecting this fee revenue, that will be updated on annual and a more robust update on a 5-year basis. And then you'll update again when you do your Nexus study. As part of this process, we're also adopting a CIP that will include all these projects, and that will be updated within, again, the annual, the 5-year, and then the updated Nexus study. So that is what is part of the process. So even though the funds may not be used right away, because it takes a long time to, accumulate the funds for a traffic project, to accumulate the funds for a fire, as long as a new fire facility, as long as the study shows that you're accumulating those funds for specific projects, and then it's updated every year in the proper way, then you're able to keep those funds over time.
Okay, great.
And that's included in the last chapter of the Nexus study.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going down the road there. We save this money, and then all of a sudden, we have to give it back. Just real quick, in a flippant kind of manner, when I look at these graphs or charts, and I see how we're ahead on or charging more money, or let's say La Mesa, Poway, they're shrunk down, and obviously we've learned that one of the reasons is because they don't include everything in the reporting that we do. Well, my first glance was, I thought, they just didn't plan to fail. They failed to plan. So they don't have enough money. And so we want to do the opposite. We want to plan ahead so that we don't fail. And so just saying from a flippant point of view, not necessarily that we're charging too much or not, they're not charging enough, but at my first glance, that's what I would say. What I would say, though, is in a follow-up workshop, is that we would bring back maybe some of the more detailed information that the vice mayor is asking about, because that does probably, and I'm going to say it this way, you've been doing these kinds of things for a long time. Staff has looked at things for a long time. And so when you talk a certain language, for instance, you don't need to read between the lines. Well, we don't necessarily read that language, so we need some help reading between the lines so that we understand how you arrived at some of these numbers. And I don't really think that, it may be a little bit more work, but I don't think it's too much to ask for, to have that as a more comprehensive report, because we are going to be eventually making a decision and voting on whether or not to increase fees or keep them same, or I certainly would never say reduce them. Unfortunately, that's what government does, is once you get your hooks into people, you keep them in people. I don't necessarily care for that, but we have to pay the bills. Have to pay the bills, have to pay the people that work for us. So I don't think that's too much to ask for. Any last comments or questions? All right, then, we're going to move on. Thank you very much.
for your time.
I thought you said that would take 10 minutes, somebody. So, all right, then, that takes us to non-agenda public comment. Any speaker slips?
No, sir.
Thank you. Let's go to city council reports. And not only is the invisible man not here tonight, but we're going to call him mute. So we'll go on to Laura.
All right. Let's see. Well, last week, the Invisible Man, myself, and the mayor were at the League of California Cities for 3 days, 4 days technically, and interesting conversation, which, I don't know, there were some interesting topics. Don't need to go into that there, but that was a big chunk of the week last week. Brews and Bites Saturday was very, very fun. My husband and I really, and my daughter joined us. We really enjoyed ourselves, and the band was great. The food and the drinks were great. And so I hope everybody that attended had a great time as well. The fact that the band ended on For Whom the Bell Tolls was really fun for me. So love that. Let's see, gosh, what is today? Wednesday? So yesterday morning, I participated in, let me see what the official name is, Bostonia Global High School in El Cajon. They have a program called Workforce Connect, which, from the time kids are freshmen to the time they're seniors, it finds pathways for them to be in the job market. And whatever their interests might be, whether it's, continuing education or getting into an industry right out of high school. And so we did mock interviews with the kids yesterday, and the future looks bright when you do things like that. The kids were just so well prepared, very interesting. It was 10-minute interviews with the kids, cycling them through. And I really want to thank Barry Jantz for inviting me to participate. It was a great morning. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up, it's just kind of been on my mind, and since we're a charter city, maybe we can look at this problem in a new way, is I appreciate all the hard work law enforcement does. I know that probably all of us are, at least I alert Marlene when I see an encampment go in one of the shopping centers, and then I just am surprised that the sheriff has to track down if they have a no trespass permit on file for these unique properties. It's like I'll give an example of the Vaughn's Shopping Center. There's several property owners within that property, so there's not a universal no trespass for that property. So if someone's behind the Vaughn's versus in front of O'Reilly Auto Parts, it's a different permit. And then those have to be updated every year or tracked down. And some of the property owners are very, they don't want that problem there, and they're local and they really care, and some don't. And that's just the only way I can look at it. So perhaps we could look at this a different way as a charter city and enact our own ordinance that we, as a city, don't allow trespassing, and then that's just in our ordinance, and that doesn't require the sheriff to have that in hand anymore to enforce the law. So something I would like the city attorney to consider. It's probably an added benefit to have that, the no trespassing from the property owner. I'm not saying do away with that totally, but I'd like to simplify the process for law enforcement and make it easier and let you know that, we as a city support you in your efforts.
I too actually want to talk about city staff tonight a little bit. So I want to thank Carl and Steve and Toby. We got a lot of roads paved this summer, and just looking at Mission Gorge getting restriped, and Fanita, Cuyamaca, Prospect. I mean, you guys done a bang-up job. So I know it's been all the efforts of the last 4 years for us to get to where we are right now, but I really, really appreciate you guys, what you've done to make this city better. Nick, you guys getting that new field done, finally get it up and running. The kids, the Ravens, are having a blast out there using it, so thank you and your staff. And lastly, Chief, I watched another fire today behind Target go up, and I got a picture from a friend that said that my campaign is on fire, bro. Literally, and it's every single day. You guys your folks are out there, fighting some of the issues we got, and then Captain, same with your folks. I think we're all aware. I'm not trying to bring up some of the main issues, but I know each and every one of your deputies are out there dealing with issues that maybe not necessarily serve and protect, mentality that they're supposed to be doing. They're dealing with a lot of the nuisances that we have, in certain areas of the city. So thank you guys for leading their people. Okay.
Rob? Okay. I'm going to tell you that I agree with the street thing. So I don't have to hear my wife telling me, how come you guys never pave roads anymore? So that's a benefit. If you're watching, dear, sorry, but I had to bring it up.
It's been 4 years of pushing for it, Mr. Mayor.
We still hear it, it's just not as much anymore.
Yeah. So one thing I will say about the League of California Cities meeting that we had is that it was interesting in many ways. They had a lot of breakout sessions, more breakout sessions for educational wise than I've seen in a long time. So it was hard to get around to them, but I know James and I, we went into one because we're talking about transparency, and it wasn't transparency at all that they were talking about. Basically, it was talking about very similar to our InterGov, where people can go online and see how their development project or their ADUs coming and things like that. And I guess maybe that is transparent in some way, but not the way we would expect it or many others would expect it, because I think when we talk about transparency here, you can't get much more transparent than having a television camera on you, watching what you're doing, and people hearing what you're saying and seeing exactly what kind of issues are facing our city. And so that's just an example that there's a lot of folks that out there in a lot of cities that have a whole lot different opinions on what's what than what we have, which kind of goes almost into that diff again. But we also saw where people had received awards for certain types of things that they do in their city. And quite frankly, one of the other things that I took away this weekend is that a lot of them are behind where we have been for a long time. They're just now doing things that we did a long time ago. So I just want to say that this city is way ahead of the game in so many ways. And I think we're going to continue being that way, and it's because of staff. Granted, you're all really a bunch of newbies when you think about it. Well, except maybe Carl. Well, he's been here a long time, so,
Chief.
and I think you know what I mean, because, and that's a really dynamic shift in the way we think about things and the new things we hear from staff, because they've have some more recent update and training and things of that nature. That's why, continuous training is always so important, and so that we can hear the best thing. Chief, have you ever been to Tiburon, California? You should go there sometime and look at their fire facility there. It's something to look for. It's quite attractive.
Chiefs are Raider fans up there.
Attaboy. Attaboy.
You could do it for us. So anyways, I just want to say is that I took away a lot of things from that show where we are really doing well in what we're doing here. Yeah, do we have some glitches that go along? Yeah, but that happens to anybody. And so just like any business. In December, we're going to have another meeting. It's called League Leaders, and we're going to work on what we will be doing for the next year and see how we can reorganize our goals and things. A lot of things that we've done over the last several years are behind us now. So, and thanks for everybody that went. Marlene, James, I think, you were an addition there. That was great because we got to hear things from your point of view also, not just a council point of view. So anyways, that's all I have. Marlene?
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have a question real quick.
Sure.
Carl, you guys talking about the roads being repaved and stuff, it just reminded me of Mast. The work that was done by Padre Dam and the repaving that was done, that's not the finished product by any means, correct? Like between Cuyamaca and Carlton Hills-ish?
No, we're on it with the AWP right now to try and get them to do some of those restorations earlier. So some information will be coming out to the webpage to the residents shortly.
Okay.
With some dates of the final work. That's
because I have seen that they repaved it, and
it's not complete.
It is horrendous right now.
There's pieces in between Cuyamaca and Halburns that have been completed, and that's what the final product we're looking. Everything from
Hold on,
Magnolia.
so between Cuyamaca and Halburns is completed. That's their
No,
final
just
product.
part of it to like Dragoy. That piece is complete, and the piece from Magnolia all the way to the eastern city limits, that's complete. But trust me, there's much more work still to be done, and we're on them and we're watching them carefully.
All right, I'll look and see exactly what that is, because if it's the parts I'm talking about,
no,
if you're a bicyclist like the mayor,
I
avoid it.
You're not gonna you don't want to drive on that bike lane.
No, we fully understand that, and we've been working on it, and we've gave them some mandates and some dates to meet. We've been coordinating with the city manager on some of those discussions, and to the point where we've almost threatened to pull the permit at this point.
Okay.
Until they can rectify it, just to be clear.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You make a good point. Where is the pride in work? So anyways, Marlene?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just again, a quick reminder to this community, we really do appreciate staff here. I know staff really appreciates all the council comments tonight, so that's really to heart for all of our team. We really appreciate it. I do want to say thank you for Brews and Bites. It was a great night, a lot of extra work for most of our team, but we really do appreciate that. And in closing, Halloween is coming up. Want to make sure that everybody remembers to watch out for those little ghosts and goblins that are running around our community on that night. Please take care. And we have a big election coming up on November the 5th. Eligible voters, please come out and vote. We have some things on our agenda or our ballot here for the city of Santee. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to voice your opinion. So thank you very much.
Great. Sean?
Just a brief response to Councilmember Koval. Clearly, we'll look at that issue, but in addition, the city manager and the sheriff and the city attorney's office, we've been working on that issue, trying to be creative. So we are having, we're hosting a meeting next Tuesday with the owners of those facilities to try to sort of make it easy for them to regularly do that. So yeah, I mean, if you know folks that own property, and you could encourage them to show up, because we will need to, over time, really work on that. so that we have a partnership with them. And I do think that that is something that has been missing for whatever reason, but this would be a first step to try to rebuild that.
We've invited over 100 property owners, brokers, security services, representatives of any type of commercial that you can think of in the community. We've gotten some responses, but we'd like to have a lot more.
Is that it? All right, then. Let's go to closed session. And that is going to be conference with legal counsel over existing litigation. Same old stuff. All right, then. We are out of closed session, back in general session. As per item number 11, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, direction given to staff. Meeting is adjourned.